Thursday night, July 8, 2021. Robert the Excon and some male who visited Robert for the last 5 days or so kept on shining the light at my puppies in the upper loft of my house for 5 days straight at nighttime. Now, Robert the Excon and Kenneth Capen Jr. have been trying to rob me for months, with Robert the Excon watching me and reporting my movements to Kenneth Capen Jr. Coincidentally, the same days that the male was at Robert the Excon's house are the same days that Robert the Excon and the male were shining lights at my puppies, who again were sitting peacefully on the upper loft of the house. Robert the Excon and the male were both snickering like hyenas and cackling like jackels whenever they could provoke the puppies into barking like they really accomplished something. There's a strong dog bite liability law in Colorado, but if you provoke the dog, then all bets are off. So Robert the Excon and his male friend were just shining their lights from their house for several days at my dogs at night, but then they changed their tactics on Thursday. On Thursday night, after dark, there was a truck that was driving all around south of Pinion Hills in the Bureau of Land Management area, the BLM area in Conejo County, south of the Lovato Bridge, where literally nobody ever goes but once in a blue moon. I believe that this was Kenneth Capen Jr. He drove really slowly for 5 minutes with his headlights right on my house, and then he stopped just at the top of the hill behind Bruce T. Johnson's place on the opposite side of the Rio Grande, and then turned his truck around. I thought he was going to keep going and go to work or wherever the heck, but no, he stops at the top of the hill, doesn't go down the hill and out and about. Instead, he stops, turns around suspiciously, and just stops, and he parks there. After a minute or two, maybe a few seconds, the driver started to flash his lights at my house. It's dark, it's nighttime, flashing the light at my house, was pointing the thing, driving real slow. I called the cops immediately after this. So thankfully, Castile County Police, they showed up and they handled the situation. They handled the situation for the night. Apparently, Robert the Excon and the male could pick on puppies, but grown men, nothing. The police shined the light on Robert and the male and put a loudspeaker on them, but they were quiet as mice. So apparently Robert the Excon and the male didn't come out to talk, which is weird because they had been loud and obnoxious for several days. Kenneth Capen Jr. spent the night in his truck south of Pinion Hills in Conejo County on the Bureau of Land Management land in order to stay away from the cops, in order to avoid the cops. Friday night, July 9th, 2021, the Mickey Mouse KKK stalker, probably again Kenneth Capen Jr., and another male, maybe this is Zen, I don't know. They were driving a loud vehicle up and down Huron Trail, trying desperately to get my dogs to bark. And when one did finally bark, I walked outside. The solar power light turned on. The driver knew I saw him, and he turned around the Seminole intersection and turned eastwards on Huron Trail, the opposite direction. Weird. Kenneth Capen Jr. and male seemed to have left, but instead they actually parked at the end of Huron Trail, and then they flashed their lights at me to let me know that they were there to keep stalking and harassing me all night. Maybe to snuff me out while I was sleeping. Who knows? I don't believe they had an end game to any of this when all this shit began, when they murdered Tecumseh on June 1st, 2020. Nor are they organized, hence the nickname Mickey Mouse KKK. The RV dump truck person, the RV dump queen, helped one of the previous drive-by shootings by shining a strong light at my house while the truck driver was shooting. One was shining this light at my house, and then the drive-by driver was shooting. I was standing in the middle of my own 5-acre property while the drive-by shooter in a truck, probably again Kenneth Capen Jr. Kenneth Capen Jr. just old Jimmy Legs, right? Just hated Billy Bud. What is that? Jimmy Legs hated Billy Bud? Why'd they? Oh, because the handsome sailor. So he had circled my house several times, and then he's up at the top of the hill in Seminole, just south of my house, when the shooting occurred. Now, James Bax or Eunice Bowman, or the tenant of James Bax and Eunice Bowman's land, the RV dump, it could be James Bax, it could be Eunice Bowman, or it could be, some tenant, or maybe some squatter, who knows. I believe that there's only one person who lives there now, probably male, and they were shining a strong spotlight at me while Kenny was doing the drive-by shooting on Seminole Trail, a previous drive-by shooting that Kenny had done. He's done at least 3 drive-by shootings so far. After circling around my house several times, I put a spotlight on him while he was driving on Seminole Trail, southbound, same place. And he fired at me after that. The next time I didn't put a spotlight on him, I just walked out of my house with a shotgun and walked to the backyard. Then I was spotlighted by the RV junkyard male on Huron Trail, 2 country blocks away from me, while being shot at by the truck driver from on top of the Seminole Trail at the Huron intersection, 2 country blocks away. The light had actually broke, so I couldn't have done it. But it wouldn't have mattered anyways. They're fucking driving around like goddamn pieces of shit, like there's no way a police officer would just sit here and watch this shit happen and not turn on their sirens, cherries and berries, and go ask a question or two. And then after they're asking a question or two, they're hauling them off to jail because they're on some bullshit. So, yeah, I just walked outside because they're driving around my house in the backyard with the shotgun. Immediately, poo, poo, poo. Heard the shots go right over my head. Now, the RV junkyard mess was spotlighted by the police when I called the 3rd drive-by shooting in. And after I called them all in, I believe. 2 of them I know I did. And after the Castile County Police canvassed the neighborhood, spotlighting everybody and everything, things were actually calm around here for months. So again, thank you to the Castile County Police. In the morning, it was Cruz Soto. In the morning, I was able to see a white Jeep parked over there on Huron Trail, and it was conspicuously just parked barely enough to where it could see the corner of my house. So that's where they had parked, shined a light over at me, just to make sure I knew that it was them. So this is after the police had already came out, and they went over and they handled the situation for that night, but, you know, more bullshit happened. Didn't feel like an emergency. I've endured at least 200 crimes so far, and frankly, I don't want to annoy the police. I feel like I've endured 200 crimes, so they get out here and the person's not around. They don't have, you know, anybody else to ask a question. I'm the only one. They, you know, it's scary in some respects, right? People are terrible pieces of shit. Now, Saturday, July 10th, 2021, a big top tent popped up just a few country blocks from me where the white Jeep was. On the intersection of Kiowa and Huron Trail, just a few parcels down from the RV dump. Again, James Bax, Eunice Bowman's land. So I'm not sure who the resident is. The white Jeep and tent stayed over there for 2 nights straight. Nothing happened except when I went walking with my dogs. A notorious sore spot for the stalking harassers. They hate it when I walk my dogs. They hate it. Saturday afternoon at about 1 p.m. or so, a white vehicle drove up the hill on Huron Trail to watch me. So somebody from that little white Jeep tent set up at the end of Huron at the corner of Kiowa and Huron. When I was walking my dog, they popped up just so they could watch me, I guess, watch my, you know, walk my dogs. I guess walking my dogs is just so goddamn entertaining. I don't want my dogs to shit in the house. I gotta take my dogs outside. So Sunday morning, July 11th, 2021, there's a white Jeep, and the tent and the male, or the 2 males, all left, but not before driving next to my house on Seminole Trail before leaving. Sunday night, July 11th, 2011, again, Robert the Excon, he is not deterred. He's still gonna fuck with me and my dogs yet once again. I take my dogs for a walk, he's whistling and shining lights at me. Months ago when all this began, Kenneth Capen Jr. would be parked on Huron Trail early in the morning, like 8 o'clock in the morning, waiting for me to walk my dogs. This is before I knew anything, and I still don't know who murdered Tecumseh. But I'm finding a lot of information out, and I keep on getting closer and closer to the truth. But just a lot of stupid shit was happening after Tecumseh got murdered. Well, you got a white truck just parked right there by Huron Trail. Well, are they hunting? Are they just out there? What's going on? Is it for me? Is it not for me? Who gives a shit? I'm going to just walk. Oh, now it's moving. Okay, it saw me moving. It's walking. It saw me move. Okay, so it's there for me. So what are we going to do? You're going to drive by, or what's happening? What's going on? I mean, it was like every time I went outside, it seemed like something had happened. I mean, this is, what, psychological terrorism, right? Like I was being watched like a hawk. Maybe from Jacqueline. Maybe from Bobby. And then some angry or suspicious stop-and-go driving would happen, or some variant thereof. And so when we were trying to be neighborly, I once asked Robert the Excon to look over my place in the fall 2020 sometime, and I returned quickly, only to catch Robert the Excon driving the opposite direction 10 minutes away from our houses. And a suspicious white truck parked right next to my house on Seminole. I was able to reach my house in time before anything had happened, but that's the caliber of this Robert the Excon. Hey, buddy! Hey, we're friends, right? Okay, why don't you look over my house? Immediately, hey, he just fucking left. Who the fuck is he talking to? Who's he calling? I think he's been in cahoots with Kenneth Capen Jr. The first drive-by happened when they were both in the same truck. They were driving out of Robert the Excon's driveway, doing stopping and going, just like for about 15 minutes, being fucking weird as shit, and then started driving north, you know, or started driving up the hill east on Delaware Trail. And then when they get to the intersection of Seminole and Delaware Trail, they're doing little stop and goes, and then they're trying to drive over here, drive over there, and then they're flashing lights at my dogs. You're driving in a fucking truck, you're coming up the goddamn road, you're fucking with my goddamn... Jesus Christ. So, I fired a warning shot, he fired some shots, and then drove on. I believe it's Kenneth Capen Jr., because Robert the Excon once said something about knowing a crazy Kenny or some shit. So that's the kind of person we're dealing with. Fucking Robert the Excon. He'll watch over your stuff. Hey, he just left. Now, Ken and Bob are loud and obnoxious. They're, getting drunk and driving around stupidly. They're flashing lights at my dogs, etc. It seems to me that Kenneth Capen Jr. is the kind of person who needs to be worked up before he goes out to hurt other people. Him acting like a fool over there is intentional. For a year, these Mickey Mouse KKK criminals have been harassing me. Ever since June 1st, 2020, there's been at least 200 crimes. I shouted to Robert the Excon. Nobody knows who he is. That I was going to turn him into planning and zoning, and Robert the Excon responded with, I don't care, they won't do shit to me, you cop caller. This smacks of Hiram Richardson's snitches get stitches thing. Apparently Hiram Richardson's the mayor around these parts, the mayor carrying on with the right-wing sovereign movement. Hiram Richardson seems to be on meth. He acts like he's tweaking all the time, or maybe his house is on meth, I don't know. But I definitely lean more towards Hiram Richardson being a tweaker, more so than any kind of mayor. One time in late 2020, Nick Villela told me that Hiram Richardson was on meth, and he was worried that he'd get desperate during the winter and go robbing the locals. So, those are the events of the last 4 days, July 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 2021, Southwest Castilla County, Colorado.